Hi, I'm Sandra Wallace, the OCD anxiety and depression coach, and I want to personally welcome you to our monthly meeting at the Gathering Place. We meet every last Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, and this is an opportunity for you to sit back and relax. I appreciate all of you that are attending after a busy day and be able to just sit in the comfort of your home or wherever brings you peace and harmony. It could be inside your favorite room in your house or out in nature or along the beach, wherever it is for you. I hope that you're there right now. I also want you to be able to take some ammunition away with you and some knowledge as it relates to different mental health issues. Tonight, we're talking about specifically cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, and anxiety. And I want to start by asking you, each of you, how many of you would admit to having negative thought patterns? I think most of us can identify with that, correct? And our brain is conditioned to always be on the lookout for danger, whether it's impending danger, perceived danger, whatever type of danger that the brain interprets as such. So, us living with anxiety, we tend to be more aware and alert of our surroundings and looking for fearful situations or having negative thought patterns. Whereas somebody who does not live with anxiety can have a fear and let it go, but we kind of get stuck in it. So, as always, I write down lots of notes to share with you, and I want to make sure that we cover all the information that we had sent out in the invite to you as it pertains to CBT and anxiety. So, let's get started. Um, Neuroscience, even the scientists that have analyzed the brain and the thought pattern, they have never been able to find a thought inside of our brain. Now, this is alarming maybe for some of you listening, but it's very encouraging. When I learned that, it gave me a lot of hope because often when you ask people, where do your thoughts come from? Immediately people respond with, well, from my head. Like, why are you even asking such a silly question? But I remember being in Dr. Vivian Rowan's waiting room back in 95 prior to getting diagnosed with OCD and having tremendous anxiety. And I remember telling myself, what am I even doing here? My thoughts are my thoughts, and how could they ever change? And I did realize that over time that our thoughts can change. So I want to talk about cognitive behavior therapy, starting with the C. Now, the cognition part is where I love as a coach to focus on identifying and challenging the negative thought patterns and beliefs that my clients have. And our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are really interconnected. They're enmeshed, and it's sometimes hard to separate them. So, if we are able to start looking and challenging them, as a result, our behavior can change and our perspective of it can change. And that leads to being therapeutic. So, there is CBT, a quick definition of it. Next, I want to talk about the five main types of anxiety disorders. We're not going to get into each one because we actually had this session a while back on the different types of anxiety. So feel free to go on our social media platforms. I know that there's a series of them that you can follow along if you like. And I just want to be able to tell you here tonight that the main five types are generalized anxiety, specific phobia anxiety, social phobia, agoraphobia, and panic disorder. Now, when we live with anxiety disorders, we will have a physical component and a cognitive behavioral component. So let's look at identifying some of the physical symptoms that people have as it pertains to their anxiety. So physically, people may become very restless, agitated. You may see them sweating. They feel that they are having heart palpitations, their heart is bouncing out of their chest. They may feel numbness and tingling in their upper and lower extremities. And remember that I often educate my clients on not to be fearful of the numbness as it pertains to the upper and lower extremities, because at the time when we are either fighting, fleeing, or freezing as it pertains to our anxiety, the brain is sending a signal to the rest of our body to respond. There's danger. And so we don't need blood in our fingertips and our feet at the time such as this. So once you recognize that what is happening both physically and psychologically, you're better able to deal with it. So those are just some of the symptoms physically. And then the psychological piece is things, and the emotional piece is things like poor concentration, overthinking, worrying, even when there's nothing to worry about. There is often people who are worriers will worry, and sometimes they can't even identify with what it is they are worrying about. They may have racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating. And as a result, and this is not an exhaustive list, but as a result of these triggers that come with the anxiety, it impacts our ability to focus. I remember many times when I was doing my exposure therapy and I was in a public area, and my anxiety was so elevated that I would walk out of the restaurant without my purse, or I would forget to pay. And it wasn't that that's who I was, it was just that the anxiety was overriding my brain and I wasn't able to concentrate properly. So you may or may not be able to identify with these, but they are just some of the symptoms that people have when they have anxiety. Next, I want to talk about the the other parts of anxiety and how we can be able to function. And I know that we were going to talk about different ways that we can deal with anxiety. Now, I always say acknowledgement is the first step in making change. Once we acknowledge that we need to change, then we can do something about it. Then we can become empowered. And so, some of the key components in managing our anxiety are things such as, and I'm going to go over 6 different points of key components in managing anxiety. One of them is mindfulness. And mindfulness is a term that's tossed around a lot, but mindfulness is being conscious of our thoughts, being aware of our thoughts and certain triggers that cause us to think a certain way. The quality and state of being aware of our consciousness will go a long way in be able to identify and be able to make those pivotal shifts. Another piece is thought monitoring, being able to track our thoughts and be able to monitor the frequency and the triggers that cause our thoughts. Now, your anxiety may show up in many different arenas. It may show up in very specific arenas. So, for example, someone living with social phobia may not be able to go out in public locations, or someone living with agoraphobia may be able to go out in the situation but be always worried about leaving that situation. So in despite what type of anxiety disorder it is, it's important to be able to track and monitor when the anxiety levels peak. So it's not going to necessarily happen in every environment, but we want to be able to track it and recognize certain patterns, because often there are patterns associated with when anxiety is showing up. Another thing that we want to do is provide affirmations to ourselves, positive affirmations to offset those negative thoughts. We can't be positive and negative at the same time. I'd like you to try that exercise going forward tomorrow, or in the future days ahead. Think of something positive. There is no way that the brain can automatically bring in something negative if you're positive. So we want to be able to practice those positive affirmations. Another thing that's really crucial for many of my clients is journaling, because we don't always see the little wins in our life, the little victories that are, in my mind, very huge victories, the fact that they're even occurring. So when we journal, we're able to write down our thoughts and our feelings and be able to say, where were we? Where were we when we had this anxiety? Are these irrational thoughts? Are they negative? Are they irrational? Why are we having the thoughts? And when we journal, we can go back on our journals and see that there could or could not be a pattern. Another example in my situation is I was always triggered by certain locations. When I was in a restaurant, my anxiety was a lot higher than if I was maybe walking down the street or in a mall. And so I was able to track initially where my anxieties was greater, had a greater target or a greater trigger point. So journaling can help that. It also is an opportunity to share our victories with each other and be able to say, hey, I wasn't able to do this a month ago and now I'm doing it. And it can be really rewarding and comforting to know that changes are taking place. Another piece is cognitive restructuring. That's our fifth one. Cognitive restructuring. Cognitive distortions are happening to us all the time. We are black and white thinkers. There is no gray mixed in there. We either go from this extreme to that extreme. So, as a coach, I'm able to help people identify their distorted cognition. And remember, going back to the beginning, the definition of cognitive behavior therapy is just that. We're able to pick up and understand where our negative thought patterns are. Number 6 will be the ability to draw on therapeutic techniques and work with someone who's an expert in that lane. Work with someone to be able to get the techniques that you so deserve to be able to work on your anxiety and move past it. Don't feel you need to take this on all by yourself. There are a lot of faulty belief systems that we have, and when we are able to write that down and put pen to paper, we're able to visibly see it. That's another tool that we can use. And then we challenge those faulty belief systems. So let me use an example with myself. If I was to ask anybody to take me to do an errand, I would think, oh my gosh, we're going to get in an accident. It's going to be all my fault because I asked that person to take me to the shopping mall, and someone's going to die or someone's going to get seriously injured. And so it stopped me in my tracks from even being able to think of that idea or give myself that option to be able to do that. So that's an example of faulty belief systems. Another example of faulty belief systems is nobody's ever going to like me. It's that extreme thinking. I will never be able to work. I will never be able to fit in society. And those are thoughts that can really hold us back from being able to work on what's needed to be able to work on. So, a real big part of that is working with your therapist or your coach on being able to identify the faulty belief systems. Because once you do that, like we said, knowledge is power, then we can start saying to ourselves, what is the realistic what is realistic about this and how likely is this going to occur? And we can put a rating system on it. And then we can think more rationally about it and be able to say, okay, you know what, this we feel this is a 9 or a 10 out of 10 that it's going to occur, but then we can look more realistic at it and be able to rate it in a different way. And by doing those specific items and challenging yourself by exposing yourself to your fears, you will soon come to realize that those fears that we have will likely never ever happen. So that's really important that we cover that and be able to identify it. Another piece to working with anxiety is being able to have your support systems. That is really, really crucial. Being able to have people to draw on that are going to be able to relate and support you through the times of needs. And that's not everyone. Not everyone's going to be that support person. But as long as you have a few good people in your life that you can count on to be there when you need them, then that can go a long way in being able to make progress. So I hope that was helpful. We are going to continue on the series of anxiety, and we will be talking about different topics next month at the Gathering Place on the last Wednesday of July. We're going to have a guest speaker come on and speak on addiction and anxiety and how those two come together. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you need any further information, please reach out to us at www.theocdcoach.com or send us an email at info@theocdcoach.com or call us by phone 1-204-295-4408, and we will be glad to answer any questions you may have. And take care, take good care, and we will see you next month. We also have a Q&A every first Monday of each month at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, and that will be available to you to come and join us next Monday, which is Canada Day, but we will still be doing our Q&A session at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll meet you there.